Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 174 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game, making his return from the injury report. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at _. Mark, I told the folks last week you were a last-minute scratch, not a healthy inactive, but inactive nevertheless. I assume we're feeling better. How are you doing today?
20 to 30 minutes ago, I thought it might be an Anthony Richardson situation where we said all week I was going to be on the pod, and then real quick we pulled an audible and I wasn't there. But thankfully, I made it where we are here.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and we're just going to dive into this Sunday slate. And I said last week on the show, it was one of the more enjoyable Sundays of football I've watched in a while. It just felt like all the games were really good. And this weekend, it kind of felt like none of the games were any good. It was not a great weekend of football. And I mean, there were good results for Eagles fans. The Eagles win, every other NFC East team loses. And so that's good. But in terms of like general watchability, and I've said before, I don't really enjoy when the Eagles play 1:00 games because all the games are on, but I'm just solely locked into the Eagles game. And then I get done with the Eagles game and I go into post game. And by the time post game wraps and I get that posted, it's like halftime of the afternoon slate. And this week, by that point, every afternoon game was already over. And so I really don't feel like I watched a lot of good football this weekend. And I kind of confirmed, going back and watching some of these games, it just wasn't a great week for football. But we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about them all. Fortunately, the Eagles only have like one more noon game or 1:00 game in like the next 2 months. And unfortunately, it's next week, but I'll be ready to get them out of that 1:00 slate so I can watch more games. But we're going to start like we always do with the NFC East. We're going to go through each of the NFC East teams' games, then we'll throw it around the rest of the league. We do have a comment coming in from longtime listener, fan of the show, Joe Ciccoletti, who asked, who has the better cut? Mark with no beard or Nick Sirianni with a shaved head? Mark, do you have thoughts on this?
I'd like to think I haven't had my Britney Spears shave my head moment. So this is just like the mustache was getting too bushy. We had to get rid of it. Nick Sirianni, I think, has lost his mind in a different way. So that's a whole other conversation that I'm happy we are not discussing on this show.
Yeah, longtime listeners of the show will remember that Mark and I used to lead off with a semi-in-depth, compared to the other games, discussion of the Eagles game for like 20, 25 minutes. Then we would get around to the rest of the league. This year, we've kind of shifted that focus because I'm all over the Eagles Pinpool Network talking Eagles. I didn't want to just repeat myself, and we decided to focus in on the rest of the NFC East. And it is nice to have a little more time to process before I have to really talk Eagles in depth. And I'll get into that later in the week. If you guys are following the show here, make sure you're subscribed to the Eagles Pinpool Network wherever you get your podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Eagles Pinpool. We have an Instagram now also at Eagles Pinpool, and my YouTube has shifted to the Eagles Pinpool Network as well. So you can follow us everywhere. Obviously love it if you guys comment on the shows, but let's jump into what was the best game among the NFC East opponents. The Washington Commanders at the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens win this game 30-23. And the Ravens offense, Mark, I know that we're supposed to talk about the Commanders, but the Ravens offense just looks unstoppable. They had an opening drive interception, which was off of a tipped pass, and they punted on their third drive, but they scored every other possession for the rest of the game. Now, there's field goals where you would like to see touchdowns, but ultimately, Derrick Henry rushes for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. Lamar rushes for 40 yards and throws for 323. Isaiah Likely only has 27 yards, but all of a sudden Mark Andrews has 66 yards and a touchdown. Zay Flowers has 132 yards. All in all, the unit puts up 484 yards. And this offense for Baltimore looks so good. And there's been some questions about the defense in some of these games. I'm not sure those were answered here because Washington's offense looked good too. Jaden Daniels had a good game. He carried an offense that had no rushing attack, throws for 269 and 2 touchdowns, doesn't have any turnovers. He was also their leading rusher. I don't know what to make of this game because you're so used to Baltimore having good defenses and thinking this would be a good barometer for Washington, but I'm not convinced Baltimore has a great defense this year, but both of these offenses are operating at a really high level right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said it last week, but Baltimore is the best. They look like the best team in the NFL. I know that the Chiefs are undefeated, the Vikings are undefeated, but you look at the 4 wins and then how the 2 losses happened, with an extremely close loss on the road in Kansas City on ring ceremony night to open the year on Thursday night, first game of the year, where you might win that game if Isaiah Likely's shoe size is a size smaller, and then you collapse against the Raiders in a way that you seem to do once a year, but you were the better team for 58 minutes of that game. And then the 4 wins, they've just looked so good. And I will say, I don't have much to say on the Ravens outside of what I've said all year. It feels like what I'll say is I was listening to Good Morning Football today at work, and I saw kind of not by choice, by the way, but I saw Kyle Brandt say that Derrick Henry should be the MVP of the NFL right now. And while I want to respect what Derrick Henry's brought, he has 700 yards through 6 games, leading the NFL in rushing. I really do think he proves what, if you put a legitimate playmaker next to Lamar Jackson, whether that be at running back, receiver, or tight end, I think it shows that Lamar can level that up. But he's not the most valuable player on his team. Look at Lamar Jackson, what he got done in this game. 40 yards on the ground, obviously, but 20 for 26, 323 yards, 12.4 yards per attempt, a touchdown, obviously. Like, finally kind of had the Zay Flowers explosion game. Like, I just think Lamar is the most valuable player again in the NFL. I don't know where the odds are. I haven't taken a look at them at all, to be honest. That was just the first time I'd thought about it really was when I heard that conversation. And Jaden Daniels probably has an argument as well. But to me, I think Lamar Jackson's been the most valuable player in the NFL. I don't know if the stats back that up, but it's how I feel.
Yeah, he's on track to throw for 4,300 yards. He's having a really good year. It would be, I believe, he's never eclipsed 4,000 yards. He's never eclipsed 3,700 yards passing, and he's on track for 4,300 yards right now. And I mean, I'm with you. That's got to be, if you're making an MVP call right now, I would think it would have to be Lamar. I'm curious to look up those numbers now, but I was trying to look up his rushing stats so far too.
If you want to look up his rushing stats, I have the odds here from DraftKings. Patrick Mahomes is still the favorite at plus 350, which I think they kind of just have to leave him there with the Chiefs being undefeated, and his numbers aren't good, but they're not bad enough to disqualify him yet. And then Lamar Jackson's second. So I'm happy to see he's up that high. If you remember, I think I gave it out on this show when we talked about it on our awards draft, but Lamar Jackson, I think I have it like 15-1 or 14-1 to win MVP this year. So I obviously have a vested interest, but Lamar at plus 575 or plus 550, Josh Allen plus 650, CJ Stroud plus 650, and then there's a drop off.
Yeah. Right now, Lamar is on pace to throw for 4,300 yards, rush for 1,100 yards, and have 34 total touchdowns.
I mean, that's better numbers than he's had in the years he won MVP.
Yeah, I was trying to look and see. He's on track for the 3rd highest rushing output in NFL history. He has 2 of the top 4 right now. So only three quarterbacks have ever topped 1,000 yards rushing in a season. Lamar's done it twice, and he's on track to do it a 3rd time.
Yeah, I think he should absolutely. I mean, I guess that what they're saying is Mahomes is the favorite, but outside of Mahomes, so I think it's kind of just like you have to put him there. Lamar's probably been the MVP so far. I haven't really heard anyone saying that. So I do think that that's a good thing to point out there. But with Washington, Jaden Daniels is, by the way, the next one there in 5th at plus 1,100. You look at what the Ravens defense was able to do. Jaden Daniels, the offense did have to punt 3 times, which I think that was the first time that had happened this year. I know they didn't punt for the first 3 or 4 weeks, let alone punt 3 times in a game. So while they scored 23, The Ravens did feel in control for most of the second half here. I feel like this game kind of went exactly how you'd expect, to be honest. If the spread was 6.5, 7, Ravens win by 7. Wasn't ever really a blowout, but I didn't really feel at any point in the second half that the Ravens were going to lose. So it's kind of exactly what I expected.
Yeah, I am also really interested to see what this offense looks like down the stretch, because I should have looked this tweet up. I remember tweeting out a couple of years ago Cliff Kingsbury's splits as a college coach and an NFL coach, like at the beginning of the season and the end of the season. And I can't remember what it is, but his teams typically start fast and then they fall off a cliff. And so I don't know if that'll be the case this year. I don't know, but there is a history of that in the past. And so I'm curious to see it. This isn't taking away anything from what Jaden Daniels has done, but the Commanders have the second best offense by DVOA in the NFL right now behind the Ravens. And, we'll see if they're able to keep this up over the course of the whole season. So it'll be exciting to watch down the stretch, especially I think they've got some good opponents coming up too. So, all right. Anything else? Any other thoughts on that game before we move on?
Brian Robinson was missed. They couldn't run the ball here at all, but yeah, nothing else besides that.
Here it is. I just found it. So this goes back to college, 2013 through 2018 in college, lost 5 of the last 6, 4 of the last 6, 4 of the last 6, 6 of the last 8, 6 of the last 8, 5 of the last 5. And then with Arizona starting in 2019, lost 7 of the last 9, 5 of the last 7, and 5 of the last 6. And so it is certainly a thing that's been a long track record. And he's not the head coach now, and maybe that makes all the difference in the world, but we'll see moving forward. So, okay, let's roll on to a team that got rolled in the Dallas Cowboys, just got obliterated. But I was looking forward to this game. I legit thought, I'm going to get out of Eagles post game. It'll be about halftime. I'll get to watch a great second half of a Detroit Lions at the Dallas Cowboys game. It'll be a really good barometer game for these teams. And boy, 47-9, Detroit wins. My funny stat of the day is that Cooper Rush put up the same QB rating, 42.2, as Dak Prescott, and almost the same QBR, an 11.2 versus Dak's 11.4. So that was fun. The Lions have now put up 40 plus in 2 straight games. They scored on their first 9 possessions in this game before they had a turnover on downs when they went for it on a 4th and 3 at the Dallas 31, up 47-9 with 4 minutes left with a backup quarterback. And I love that they're just dialing up trick plays and going for it on 4th down in a 30-point game. That was awesome. Definitely rubbed the Cowboys' noses in it. And they did it all, by the way, with Amon-Ra St. Brown having 37 yards. And so this is a incredible offensive performance by the Lions. What did you think watching this one?
I thought you were going to say, and they did it all, by the way, on Jerry Jones' birthday.
That's true too. Yeah,
birthday. That's a wonderful little birthday present under the tree there.
Oh, time out. 82nd birthday. I've got something for you. So Dallas won 16 straight home games over the previous 2 seasons, not counting the playoff loss last year. But they're 0-3 at home this year. They've lost 4 straight, counting the home playoff game last year. How much do you think they've been outscored by in those 4 games?
Oh, it's by 80.
82. Happy 82nd birthday, Jerry Jones.
There you go. I mean, there's a good time. I should have known. It was good to see Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker got out there, the backup quarterback. We haven't thought about him in a couple of years. But, the Lions. It's nice when you handicap a game and it just, works out perfectly to that. I loved the Lions in this game. Not a great gambling weekend for me, but the Lions were one of my bigger bets. And the reason that I loved it was because the Dallas Cowboys linebackers absolutely stink. They can't stop the run. And you see David Montgomery, 12 carries, 80 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs, 12 carries, 63 yards. Part of why I've been low on Dallas all year and all offseason. You don't have any sort of a running game. Rico Dowdle and Zeke combined for 13 carries for 42 yards. And my other biggest thing was they have nothing outside of CeeDee Lamb to take attention away from CeeDee Lamb or to give you anything outside of him. And you look at this, Jalen Tolbert, 4 catches, 43 yards. Kavontae Turpin, 4 catches, 24 yards. Everybody else, nothing really. it's not going to get the job done. They needed to go out and they needed to add a running back. They needed to go out. They needed to add a second weapon outside of CeeDee Lamb. They did neither. They needed to go out and they needed to dress their linebackers. They didn't do it. Playing against the Lions, they were the perfect team to kind of exploit all three of those weaknesses all at the same time. Also, one last thing, Terrion Arnold. I wasn't like fully locked in on the whole second half, so I can't give you like a full breakdown. Terrion Arnold had multiple plays in this game where I was like, wow, that guy's awesome. Like he looked really good. He had one play that I know that Dallas fans were crying for a pass interference, and it looked like it live. And then when they broke it down and slowed, I think it was like 4th and 3 on Dallas's own 40. They were down like maybe like 27-6 or 20-6 at this point. So they felt like they had to go for it. And Terrion Arnold came like all the way around him, really. And when they slowed it down, he didn't really make contact with him. It was a pretty incredible play on like a little slant in route. It was pretty. I'm pretty impressed by some of the new pieces on Detroit's defense. But obviously, I don't know if we mentioned it, but Aiden Hutchinson goes down. That's kind of, it sucks to say, in a 47-9 win on the road for the Detroit Lions, the biggest takeaway is, can we expect the defense to be the same now without what was probably a top 5 player in the NFL so far this year? Yeah,
and he breaks his leg. He's out for the rest of the season. It could potentially impact his availability at the start of next season. So you hate to see that. Best wishes to Aiden Hutchinson. Hopefully he's able to come back from that well. And you also do have to wonder, from the football perspective, what move do the Lions make now? Because you got to assume there's going to be a move coming. You can't be playing this well and lose a guy like that on defense, I feel like, and not look to make a move. So I don't know if a Hassan Reddick is in play. I don't know that he fits what they want to do, but I would imagine there will be some corresponding move in the coming weeks for the Lions.
And they're a team that we kind of complained that they didn't go out and address the other edge rusher outside of Hutchinson, and now you don't have Hutchinson. So they're really, really weak now in terms of that pass rush.
Yeah. I've got a fun stat for you, Mark. After this game, Detroit is second place in the NFL in point differential at plus 60.
I know this.
Oh, you know this? All right. Well, we're going to play along. For those of you listening on the podcast, who is number 1? And I'll wait for a second. And it is Minnesota, who is up by a point at plus 61. Third and fourth place is the Chicago Bears at plus 47 and the Green Bay Packers at plus 41. The NFC North has the top 4-point differentials in the NFL. They make up 4 of the 11 teams with 4 or more wins at this point in the season. And so the NFC North is surging, and they all, the Vikings didn't play, but pretty much everybody else won convincingly this weekend.
Yeah, it's obviously the best division in football. I think they will definitely have 3 teams in the playoffs, and it'll come down to Chicago, kind of. Joe Ciccoletti asked, does Dallas look to move on from Parsons to get as much draft capital as possible? Potentially Lions paying for that to replace Hutch. Yeah, I think he's probably too young to do that. How long until they have to pay him? Is he not? He's under contract next year. So I understand you can hold out, but you probably don't do it. It doesn't seem like they're going to have the money to pay him. So I get where Joe's coming from. But I think if you're Dallas, you have to hold on to him.
Yeah. Micah Parsons is on his 5th-year option this season, which means the Cowboys will probably franchise him for the next 2 years before they decide to work out a deal. But yeah, I don't think they'll do that. But if you were the Cowboys and you just feel like this is over and we can't afford to pay him because we've paid Dak and CD, but I generally just don't think it makes sense to trade such an impactful player that's so young. Like, that's the guy you rebuild around. That's not the guy you trade away.
Yeah, what's the point of trading him away? Or what was the point of paying the other guys if you trade him away, kind of?
Yeah. All right, let's keep rolling on. Let's go to the Meadowlands, where the Cincinnati Bengals beat the New York Football Giants 17-7. The Bengals defense was ranked 31st in points allowed this season, and they had not held a team to single digits in 75 consecutive games, which is the longest active streak in the NFL, and it's the 6th longest in NFL history. So they show up in the Meadowlands, and they lock down the Giants. And I mean, it's not super impressive against this Giants offense, but the Bengals keep themselves alive after their 0-3 start. They now sit at 2-4. There's still a chance, that they could go on a run and get to the playoffs. And you do feel like you have to keep winning to keep that chance alive for several more weeks. But that they stymied the Giants. They just couldn't get anything going on the ground. Tyrone Tracy had a really good week last week. This week, he rushed 17 times for 50 yards. And Daniel Jones was the leading rusher for the Giants at 56 yards. Their kicker missed both of his field goal attempts. Never good. Mark loves kickers. The Giants defense did look good against a Bengals offense that's been really good so far. I mean, the Bengals offense has not been their problem, and they only put up 17. Joe Burrow got sacked 4 times in this game. He has only been pressured on 21.5% of his dropbacks prior to this game, but the Giants pressured him at 47.1%. And the Giants defense is good. The offense isn't, but they lead the leagues in sacks. They lead the league in sack rate, and they're only 15th in blitz rate. They're also second in tackles for loss. And even with Kevon Thibodeau going on IR, Brian Burns has played well. Dexter Lawrence, I would still argue, is the best non-quarterback, the most impactful non-quarterback in the NFL. He's such a good player that plays such an unsexy position nobody talks about. So the defense is good, but ultimately it's not going to really matter for the Giants the way the offense is playing.
Yeah, no, I don't think we did see the defense. The defense has gotten better because the Commanders, I felt, had a pretty good week against them early this year. The Vikings, same thing. But I still think you can get to the secondary, but the defensive line is definitely really good. Daniel Jones, I think this was like a classic Daniel. This is what you get from Daniel Jones on primetime or in a big game. And it's kind of, this provides a little bit of there's no excuse for the Eagles defense next week if Daniel Jones and the Giants offense come out firing with these long drives. And, I hate to make this an Eagles thing, but even though the Eagles against the Browns held them to X amount of points, it did feel like they were able to have these long sustained drives that ate up so much clock, especially at the end of the third into the fourth. So they should be able to not allow that against the Giants. I mean, looking at just how many times they punted 4 times throughout the game, obviously 2 stops for missed field goals. But I don't believe in this Giants offense, especially without Neighbors. I'm assuming Neighbors will be back next week. So that'll probably help out for sure. Bengals defense is kind of, it's the Giants offense and there's 2 missed field goals, but I think I'm kind of siding with the fact that I think the Bengals are probably going to make the playoffs. You look at the AFC wild card playoff picture, and there's not a whole lot. If you assume the 4 division winners are the Bills, Ravens, Texans, and Chiefs, Steelers probably make the playoffs. Go try to figure out who those 6th and 7th playoff teams are. It's the Chargers, the Colts, the Bengals, maybe the Jets, the Jets or the Bills or whoever didn't win the division. It's not a lot. I usually wouldn't be the guy pushing for a 2-4 team to make the playoffs, but next 3 games for the Bengals, you have at Browns, Eagles at home, Raiders at home. You could probably go 2-1 there, if not 3-0, if you're the Bengals and you're sitting at 4-5, 5-4. Then once you're 4-5, 5-4, I think you're obviously in the mix. So right now, I would assume the Bengals are going to make the playoffs, which I did not think I'd feel that way a week or 2 ago.
Yeah, we spent 5 minutes on this game, Mark, and we haven't even talked about the most surprising thing in this game. Most surprising, yeah, Joe Burrow having a 47-yard rushing touchdown. That's the longest quarterback touchdown run in Bengals history. Mark, Joe Burrow, noted scrambler extraordinaire, rips off a 47-yarder against the Giants in this one. So there you go. I saw somebody call him Vanilla Michael Vick on Twitter. I don't know if we want to run with that nickname, but there you have it. So
I like it.
All right, let's move on to the rest of the NFL slate. We'll start off with Thursday Night Football. The San Francisco 49ers beat the Seattle Seahawks 36-24. The 49ers were up 23-3 in the third quarter, and they let the Seahawks pull it back within 5 with under 2 minutes left before they hit a big run to put the game away. They blew a 16-3 lead last week and a 2-touchdown lead against the Rams earlier this season. This was almost their 3rd double-digit meltdown of the season. And then speaking of meltdowns, the Seahawks started the year 3-0, And then they lost 3 games in an 11-day stretch to drop to 500. So it's been a rough 2 weeks in Seattle with those 3 losses. In this game, Seattle just lost the battle in the trenches. They rushed for 2.6 yards per carry. They gave up 6.9 yards per carry to a 49ers team still missing Christian McCaffrey, and that also missed Jordan Mason for a portion of this game. San Francisco went 3 of 5 in the red zone this week, which has been a major struggle for them so far this season. And so they actually converted red zone trips into 6, which is a big improvement for them. That's why they lost that game last week. They kept settling for field goals. And Nick Bosa generated 14 pressures in this game, which is tied for the most by any player over the last 4 seasons. Mark, do you know who he is tied with?
His brother? Is that why you're asking?
Himself. He did it also in week 4 of 2022 season against the Rams. So that's Thursday Night Football. What'd you think watching this one?
I won't spend too much time on it since it was Thursday night. The thing, Brock Purdy is the takeaway for me. I think Brock Purdy is so much more impressive now than he was in either of his first 2 seasons when he was being pushed as an MVP candidate. And the funny thing about that, it's like I look at the numbers to try to justify it, and his completion percentage is down. His yards per game is down. His yards per attempt is down. His interception rate is up. His sack rate is up. His passer rating's down. His QBR is down. But when I watch him, it's much more impressive this year. It feels more real. It feels less contrived and less just based on the skills of the players around him. It feels like he's making the plays happen more than the other way around this year. It's not being backed up by numbers, but I've felt that way multiple times this year watching 49er games.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the Sunday slate. For the second straight week, we had a London game with the early kickoff, and this time it was the Jaguars versus the Bears, and the Bears win 35-16. The Bears offense seems to be figuring things out. In the first 3 weeks of the season, Caleb Williams had a bottom 5 success rate in the NFL at 37.2%. The last 3 weeks, it's been a top 5 success rate at 54.7%. Now, it's worth pointing out that the Bears' last 3 opponents are the 3 worst defenses in the NFL by DVOA, and the Jags, Panthers, and Rams. And so you can take from that what you will. But Caleb Williams had a good game. His completion rate of 79% is the highest single game mark in league history by a rookie with 25 or more attempts and 4 or more passing touchdowns. He sets career highs in success rate, touchdown passes, completion percentage over expectation, and he did it in structure as well. He was 13 of 14 in quick game for 3 touchdowns, 9 first downs. He ended up rushing for 56 yards. Right now, he's averaging 220 yards per game through the air. He would need to average 243 per game over the rest of the season to hit that 4,000-yard mark, which a Bears quarterback has never done. So, there's going to be bumps in the road as you play better defenses, but he's looked good the last few weeks, and no level of NFL defense, no matter how bad they've been performing, do you take that away from a rookie? And then on the flip side, the Bears defense is playing well too. They're only allowing a little under 17 points a game, but their 4 wins are against opponents who are combined 4-16. So the Bears are hard to put a finger on how good they are, but Bears fans should be excited because they've played bad teams before and they didn't beat them, and they're doing it this year. So we'll see down the stretch. I got nothing to say about Jacksonville. They're just a disaster.
Defense hasn't given up 21 since like halfway through last year. So that's something to definitely point to. It was around the time Montez Sweat got traded over. So they've been a pretty elite defense since that happened. Next 3 weeks, pretty, at Commanders, not a good defense, at least you could say. So I think you'll see Caleb put up some numbers there. At Cardinals, not a good defense. And then the Patriots, they should go 2-1 in those games. I think this is a Bears team that should be 6-3. Then you have Packers, Vikings, at Lions, at Niners, at Vikings, Lions, Seahawks, at Packers. That's your last 8 games. Not a single team who is below 500. And the team who isn't above 500 is the 3-3 49ers, who I think we all think are a top 5, top 10 team in the NFL still. So Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. We're going to find. I think the Bears are going to be 6-3, but we're going to find out who they are after that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we talked about at the end of when the schedule came out, is how the NFL did a lot of favors to the Bears with that easy early schedule to unload all the rookies. But we'll keep an eye on them down the stretch. Let's go on to another one of the NFC North teams. Not in the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals traveled to Green Bay, and Green Bay wins 34-13. And the Packers offense looks like it's starting to click. I mean, you start the year with a game in a foreign country. Jordan Love injures his knee. He comes back and has a rough performance, and you've got people questioning, did they bring him back too fast? Jordan Love was on this week. He throws for 258 and 4 touchdowns versus only 1 interception, which the interception came on an out route. He's throwing as the receiver breaks and the receiver fell down, and a cornerback covering a different receiver intercepted it. So, I mean, that's just a bad break. There's nothing you can really do about that, but played a good game. He had the highest passing success rate of his career. He has multiple passing touchdowns in 10 consecutive games now, and only 10 quarterbacks have ever done that in NFL history. He's the first to do it since Tom Brady did it for 13 straight games in the 2020 to 2021 season. So their offense is clicking. The defense, I thought this was more the Cardinals shooting themselves in the foot with fumbles and penalties. Their defense shoots them in the foot out the gate. They allowed 3 scoring drives on the first 4 series of the game with 4 defensive penalties. They also wiped out a fumble recovery on a punt return, and we're in a 24-0 hole. Then at the end of the game, it's the offense who had 3 fumbles lost on the final 3 drives of the game. So that's a rough way to end a game. The Packers have had incredible turnover luck. Last season, they forced 18 turnovers on the year. This year, they've already forced 17. And so the Packers are yet another team in that NFC North that just looks really good. And I don't know what to make of the Cardinals. It seems like they just choose which weeks they're going to be good and which weeks they're going to be bad.
I think the Packers are going to go to the Super Bowl. I keep pushing that narrative, but this game I was watching and I'm like, this is what a Super Bowl kind of contending team does in a situation like this against a pretty bad Cardinals team. Jordan Love looks like every bit of what we thought, he could take a leap to be this year. The multiple options with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed, and now the tight end is stepping up, Tucker Kraft. So the defense, we saw them step up, obviously, when Malik Willis had to step in for those 2 weeks. And then here, even if it was self-inflicted penalties, they kept them to 13 points. So it's the defense has shown it can step up as long as it can kind of continue to do that. Obviously didn't do that against Minnesota earlier this year. That was Love's first game back. There was a lot of turnovers in that game. I'm kind of willing to kind of look past that game a little bit. I think they're a full-blown Super Bowl contender. And then on the other side, I kind of keep harping on this. It just feels like Arizona looks like a team in year 1 of a coaching regime, not in year 2. So I just don't think Jonathan Gannon and Drew Petzing have gotten it going on either side of the ball on any consistent level, which is why that win against San Fran was so crazy.
Yeah. Daniel chimes in on YouTube and says that he doesn't think the Packers make the Super Bowl literally because they don't have a kicker. Mark's the worst person in the world you can give that take to, because he's just going to say he doesn't care about kickers.
Yeah, they'll find a kicker. They'll find a soccer player somewhere off the street. No, but they should cut Braden Arvison. That guy stinks. I will say that.
All right. Let's keep rolling. Let's go to the AFC South. Go to Tennessee. Indianapolis beats Tennessee 20-17. And literally my bullet point for this game just says this was a gross game on both sides. Like, both offenses struggled. Will Levis threw the ball 27 times for 95 yards. This was just a gross game that I don't really have a lot of takeaways from, other than not that there was any doubt the Texans were going to win the AFC South, but the AFC South is thoroughly uninteresting to me for the rest of the year.
I thought Drake Maye had some exciting moments.
Okay, that's the AFC East.
Well, I got distracted. You mentioned the Texans. I got distracted here.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was just saying that the Texans. We've known they were going to win the AFC South, but I'm just uninterested in the AFC with Anthony Richardson out, with Will Levis starting for Tennessee. Like, there's just nothing interesting for me in the AFC South at this point in time.
Sorry, I was thinking about the AFC South games. I got distracted there. But the Colts and Titans, I don't have anything to say about here. The Flacco should start. Apparently, Richardson's going to start. They were going to start Richardson this week, but Flacco started. I would have bet the Colts if I'd known. I didn't pay attention to this game whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the game you wanted to talk about.
That's my bad.
No, you're good. That's actually the next one on the list. And I thought maybe I started going off my wrong notes for a second. But before we get there, a comment from Cameron asks, what happened to Levis? The regression is ... I don't know. I don't know that he regressed. I just kind of think he was never any good.
He had those one or two big moments last year. The one on Monday Night Football. And I think that they got people exaggerated how important those big moments were. But yeah, he's not good whatsoever. They need to move on immediately.
Yeah. The question is to who, but
anyways, not this year. I mean, after this year.
Yeah. All right, let's go to New England. Houston beats New England 41-21. I talked last week about the Texans' total lack of a running game. And Joe Mixon returned, and just like that, the rushing struggles were solved, at least for a week. He has 102 yards and a touchdown on 13 carries. He added 30 receiving yards and a touchdown. Dameon Pierce had 8 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown. And so you see that on the Texans side. Texans are good. That's great. I want to talk about Drake Maye, who should have been starting all along. I mean, I've said that consistently. Against a Texans defense that held Josh Allen to the worst game of his career a week ago, Drake Maye went 20 of 33 for 243 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, he threw 2 picks. He's a rookie making his first start. He also led them in rushing yards with 38, so he had no ground game to speak of. He became the only first-round quarterback this season to throw a touchdown pass in his debut. Jaden Daniels didn't do it. Caleb Williams didn't do it. Drake Maye did it, and he threw 3. Mark, do you know how many touchdown passes Jacoby Brissett threw in 5 games this season?
3.
2.
Drake
Maye should have been the starter all along, and it's ridiculous that he wasn't. I don't care about the offense. I don't care. He should have been playing. But I do have a question for you. So Drake Maye throws his first career touchdown pass to Kayshon Boutte. It was also Boutte's first touchdown reception of his career. Who gets the ball? Who do you give the ball to? Is this like, you got to cut the ball in half and give them each half? What do you do here?
Did you hear? Did you get the report or no?
No, what'd they do?
We'll have to find out. I don't know. No, I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Yeah. I feel like
you need a reporter to ask.
Yeah. I feel like it's got to be Maye's, because I don't know. That feels like I'm the more important player. I get it. But also, like, it's his rookie year. It's not even Kayshon Boutte's rookie season. So
Kayshon may never score again, though.
That's true. I feel like you waive a little bit of your right to first touchdown, whatever, when it's not even your rookie season. But you're right. Drake Maye's definitely got a lot more touchdowns in the future than Kayshon does.
The rushing game here, Ramondre Stevenson sat out. They had 21 carries for 44 yards outside of Drake Maye. So, yeah, I would say that'll be better going forward with Ramondre back and just in normal games. So, Drake Maye really impressed me with some big throws. That's really all I have from this game. They're 5-1. I get that they won this game by 20. I'm like ultimately not that impressed by Houston. Every time I watch them, I feel like I just keep betting against them, and I'll do it again because they're playing Green Bay this week. And you just heard how high I am on Green Bay. So I just don't believe in Houston.
All right. Let's keep rolling. Let's go to the Superdome, where the New Orleans Saints lose to the Buccaneers 51-27 in such a weird game. Tampa Bay goes up 17-0 in the first quarter. The Saints outscore them 27-7 in the second quarter to take a lead into halftime. And then the Bucs outscore the Saints 27-0 in the second half and win the game. Tampa Bay ended with 594 yards of offense. Baker Mayfield threw 4 touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions. Sean Tucker rushed for 136 yards and a touchdown. He also had 56 receiving yards and a touchdown. I think the interesting thing in this game was Spencer Rattler. He starts for an injured Derek Carr. And at halftime, I'm thinking, like, my take about what week is Spencer Rattler going to become the starter over Derek Carr is looking pretty good, because he's 10 of 13 for 137 yards and a touchdown. And then Todd Bowles decided to stop playing with his food and dialed up the pressure, and Rattler fell apart. He went 11 of 23 with 2 interceptions in the second half. So that's a rough matchup in your first start going against Todd Bowles. I do think he showed some promise on a day where New Orleans had no rushing attack. They were playing from behind. Alvin Kamara couldn't get going. I would like to see Spencer Rattler. I think I heard he's probably going to start next week with Carr still injured.
Yeah.
I would like to see him play somebody that's not Todd Bowles. Another rookie in this game, Tyke Smith, who I think you liked in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
He forced a fumble in this game that Antoine Winfield returned for a touchdown. He forced another one that was overturned on review, and he had a pick. So it was a big game for the rookie.
Yeah, big day for Tyke Smith. I liked him coming out of Georgia. But yeah, the Saints play Denver next week, so it'll be interesting to see on Thursday Night Football too. So it'll be interesting to watch Spencer Rattler there. Yeah, I liked him a lot in the first half here. And obviously, I think they changed the game plan in the second half. But this game was 27-24 with like 4 minutes left in the third. And then it's 51-27. So it totally changes what you think the game was. But it was a close back and forth game. The first half was really fun. I think it was 27-24 at halftime. So, and they didn't score for a bit in the third, but really fun game. And then Tampa just blew it apart in the second half. But Tampa keeps winning these games, and I keep being like, it's kind of the same with Houston. Like, I shrug my shoulders and I'm waiting for Tampa to show me who they really are. And I guess we'll see this upcoming stretch for Tampa. Pretty brutal. They have Baltimore at home on Monday Night Football. They play the Falcons the next week at home. They go to Kansas City for Monday Night Football, and they come home and they play San Fran. So pretty brutal stretch before a really easy stretch after that. But we'll find out a lot about Tampa over the next 4 weeks.
All right, let's get into the afternoon slate. Let's go the Los Angeles Chargers at the Denver Broncos. The Chargers led this game 20-0 at halftime. This was the first time this season that Justin Herbert has thrown for over 180 yards. It's also the first time he's attempted 28 or more passes this season. So not a very interesting game, honestly. I didn't think Bo Nix was dreadful through 3 quarters. He was 4 of 14 for 27 yards with an interception. Denver did go on back-to-back touchdown drives, and then they kicked a field goal in the fourth quarter to make it interesting, but there was less than a minute left, and they didn't recover an onside kick. And the Chargers end up getting out of there with a win. Bo Nix looks really bad, and I don't know that the Chargers look much better is kind of my takeaway.
The Chargers offense looked good here, but Surtain went out really early in this game for Denver.
First play of the game, I think he got a concussion.
Yeah, first play, the best player on their team went out, and that's kind of the linchpin of their defense for sure. So felt like they attacked the new corner that got brought in a lot, and Herbert did a good job of that. So I was pretty impressed, actually, with the Chargers offense. And then they took their foot off the gas in the second half, and Denver kind of went nuts in the fourth quarter. And Bo Nix did the thing where he makes his stats look passable because it's shocking to see what his stats look like now compared to what you just said, 4 for 14 for 27 yards going into the fourth. So good for garbage time Bo. That he was able to make that happen. But yeah, not much more to say about this game than the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers were pretty impressive here.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep rolling then. Let's go to Vegas, where the Steelers beat the Raiders 32-13. The Steelers defense, as it always is the star of the show. They forced 3 turnovers. Special teams blocked a punt. TJ Watt was responsible for 2 of the forced fumbles. The Steelers had a 30-yard touchdown drive, a 7-yard touchdown drive, an 18-yard field goal drive, and my personal favorite, a negative 10-yard field goal drive on the day, thanks to the short fields, courtesy of defense and special teams. The Raiders took the lead in this game on their opening possession. So they give up a field goal. They go on a 10-play, 70-yard touchdown drive to go up 7-3. And Mark, let me read you the drives after that for the Raiders. So they get the opening touchdown drive, 3 and out, fumble, turnover on downs, blocked punt, 3 and out, fumble, interception. And then they had another 10-play, 70-yard touchdown drive. So brutal performance offensively for the Raiders in this one.
Justice for Gardner Minshew. He should have never been benched. He was not the problem, obviously. The problem is everything else going on in Vegas. Antonio Pierce is a disaster as a head coach, and I kind of defended that hire because I felt like they had to do it. But I did kind of think Max Crosby threatening to demand a trade at the time was insane, and now it looks even crazier. Aiden O'Connell stinks. This Raiders offense has nothing interesting besides Brock Bowers at all. And then the Steelers, not a good day for Fields. I mean, took some bad sacks. That seems to be kind of a linchpin for him. I'm searching for another word other than linchpin, but seems like he really takes some brutal sacks at bad times, but did enough with his feet to kind of justify keeping him in there. Scored 32 points, obviously, some of that late, but a lot of people I saw early in the game were clamoring for Russell Wilson. But I think Justin Fields, the rushing ability that he brings is so much more valuable than whatever improvement Russ might bring through the air. And I'm kind of skeptical if that would even happen.
Yeah, Fields rushed for 59 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he only threw for 145 yards. And this was the Steelers' third win this season with less than 300 yards of offense, the most of any team. Najee Harris recorded his 7th 100-yard rushing performance, which is probably not what you were looking for from a first-round pick in his 4th year. But he did have 63 rushing yards over expectation, which was his highest mark of his career. So, it's the same old for the Steelers. Great defense, anemic offense. You'll end up around 500. A couple comments here before we move on. Joe Ciccoletti asks about the Chargers defense. Says they've been the difference. Have they allowed the least amount of points? They have. They've allowed 13.2 points per game, which leads the Steelers at 14.3. So it's really close between those two. Daniel Lee says a dream coach QB combo might be Jalen Hurts and Mike Tomlin. I'm interested in why. Drop in the chat. Let me know why you think that. I generally think of, I guess maybe he's just like a more relaxed coach. Maybe it's a personality thing because he doesn't call offensive plays. So
I do think if Jalen was on the Steelers, I think they'd be like a Super Bowl contender.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, okay, let's roll on to, this is the final game because NFC East was Sunday night. So the final game we've got to talk about here is the Carolina Panthers hosting the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons win 38-20. This was a 1-score game going into the 4th quarter, but the Falcons scored 10 points in the final 6 minutes to pull away after A.J. Terrell intercepted Andy Dalton in the red zone. The Falcons' rushing attack got going in this game. Tyler Algier rushed for 105 yards and a touchdown, while Bijan Robinson added 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. This was Bijan Robinson's first multi-rushing touchdown game. Multi-rushing touchdown game. The first one of his career. This was also the first time since 2008 that the Falcons have had 2 players rush for more than 90 yards in the same game. Back then, it was Michael Turner and Jarius Norwood. So on the Panthers side, the offense just looks competent under Andy Dalton. Every week that I watch the Andy Dalton Panthers offense, it's just a bigger indictment of Bryce Young. He's 26-38 for 221 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, he did throw 2 interceptions in this game. Chuba Hubbard rushed for 92 yards. This is his 4th straight game with 90+. I did, though, have to laugh about the broadcast. And there's like less than 2 minutes left. The Panthers are driving into the red zone. And they were talking about Bryce Young coming in last week when they were losing the game and how, there's a lot he can learn from Andy Dalton. And then this happened on the broadcast. The announcer started to say, he said, quote, "I think he's learning along the way. I think he needs to watch how a true professional," and that's the end of the quote, because as he's saying that, Andy Dalton threw an interception and the other announcer broke in and started yelling about the interception. So I did get a really good chuckle out of that at the end of that game.
Yeah, I think it's probably time to play Bryce again. Why not? Your season's probably done. But yeah, I don't know. Who cares at this point what the Panthers do? Either way, they're going to stink. That defense is terrible. But Falcons are right where they need to be. 2 seed right now. Joe said, "Am I back on the Falcons?" I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. I have my tickets on them to win the NFC, to win the Super Bowl. I couldn't be more in on the Falcons. They're sitting here at 4-2. I had my parlay with the Chiefs, Eagles, and Falcons to all win their divisions. The Chiefs are going to win that division. So that's basically a Falcons-Eagles division parlay now. I feel great about the Falcons side of that parlay. So I think the Falcons are exactly where they need to be. You look at they started the year with the Chiefs, the Eagles, and the Steelers, which, whatever. We could argue about what the Eagles are now or what the Steelers are now, but pretty brutal schedule to start the year with. And you start that 1-2, you win the next 3 games. It's after week 1 loss to the Steelers. Well, okay, I was out on them. I was concerned because Kirk looked really bad in week 1. He has looked like a totally different guy over the last 5 weeks, I'd say, especially since the second half against Philadelphia. I'd say the first half, he didn't look great in that game, but that week 1 was really weird. Maybe you should have played in the preseason more, or I don't know what that was. Maybe the Steelers were just a really bad matchup for them, but he looked really slow and not sure of his Achilles in that game. I mean, since then, he's looked incredible. This Falcons offense has been exactly what we thought, maybe more Algier than we thought there'd be, and less Bijan maybe, but this is exactly what we kind of expected. Pitts being used here, 70 yards for him, 74 yards and a touchdown for London. Darnell Mooney getting involved. I mean, this is what, when I picked the Falcons to be what I picked the Falcons to be, this is kind of what I had in my head.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you had all the stuff after week 1 about no handoffs from under center. Every pistol play was a handoff. Every shotgun play was a drop back. Like, it was just weird. And you had the stat about how much he moved per drop back, and it was like by far the lowest of his career. So I think there were some legitimate concerns about his just inability to function on the Achilles, and that's just totally faded away, starting really kind of in week 3. But Falcons, I think they're kind of a slam dunk to win that division unless something goes wrong. I'm not in on Tampa yet. I mean, Tampa could maybe do it. I like Todd Bowles and that defense. I'm unsure about Baker at times, but one of those teams is winning it, and I definitely favor the Falcons.
And Atlanta has a win against Tampa already this year.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that gets us through the Sunday slate. Obviously not talking about the Monday night slate, recording on Monday afternoon to get this out in your guys' feeds. But so that's going to do it for this one. Mark, do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Final thoughts. Bet Justin Fields, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts touchdown scorers every week. Jaden and Jalen didn't score this week, but Justin Fields did. I think if you bet all 3 of those guys every week, it's plus money. It's seemingly all 3 every week. I think you'll come out ahead.
Counterpoint. Maybe don't bet Jalen Hurts touchdown scorer this week. This is the Saquon Barkley revenge game. Are they really going to vulture touchdowns away from Saquon against the Giants?
I'll tell you what, they need to do whatever it takes to win the damn game. So if they get to the 1-yard line, they better be pushing. I don't care about any revenge. Maybe put Saquon at the push.
Push Saquon.
Yeah, have him take the snap, but don't mess around and do something stupid and not run the push. Don't get me started on 3rd and 1 in the second quarter with 3 timeouts. What a joke.
Third and goal from the 1-yard line, and they'll run Saquon out in the Wildcat.
I would destroy my television. No.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for episode 174 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, smash that subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Shane Heff NFL. He's at Mark Henry Jr. The network is at Eagles Pin Pull. We're on YouTube at Eagles Pin Pull as well. Drop us a 5-star rating wherever you stream your podcasts. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you guys next week for our Week 7 recap show.